Okay, welcome everybody. So I am very excited to see everybody in person. As you know, there's sometimes tough conversations that are hard to have over Zoom when you want to get ideas and thoughts. We looked at a council governance before the fair, and with numbers, we decided not to. At this point, we know our COVID numbers are up, but at some point, we just needed to have this conversation, have everyone come together. So I really want to thank the Spokane Valley Chamber and Mayor Ken Haley, the City of Spokane Valley, for helping us to secure this location and host this location, because this truly gives us that ability to spread out. There's hand sanitizers on the table. People are wearing masks. We're doing coffee service. We're not doing any food service, talking with the health district. Those are the protocols that we felt we could do this safely and keep everyone safe, so we could have this conversation today. I also want to thank North State Heating Company for hosting the beverage service today, so thank you for that. Two people that have been instrumental in helping today happen here. All the people, as you know, nobody is happening without people behind the scenes, and so I want to thank my executive assistant, Brenda Nelson, who is in the back. She is new, Jim Brown. Jim Brown retired in December, and so I got the ability to have Brenda come and join me, and I'm very excited. And then I also want to thank Jeff Morris, our public policy advisor with Spokane County. He is for Spokane County all things ARP for us. So he's kind of our gatekeeper, our person in the know, and is going to help me with the presentation in just a little bit. So with that, I do want to say that we are here today as we truly have a unique opportunity, and our citizens are looking to us to lead. As we have $209 million that are coming into our community. In the most recent Spokane Journal of Business article, Dennis Vermillion, CEO of Avista Corp, really put it well as I was trying to think through what to say today and what this meeting means to our community. He said, looking back at recent history, many great things have happened when people have come together to celebrate, brainstorm, and collectively invest and envision ways to improve the community. Thank you for that quote, because that is why we are here today, to brainstorm and envision ways to improve our community through a bold, open, and honest conversation about the possibilities of this one-time investment from the American Rescue Plan. My hope is as we come together here today, we came with an open mind, an open heart, because we truly are here to serve our community and make our community better. So I look forward to this conversation today, and I also want to thank my fellow commissioners. Commissioner French is in the back for being here today, and Commissioner Kearns is in the middle there, because the county is really trying to take the lead. We'll talk about healthcare is different than ARP, but to have a regional conversation, I think the county is the right place to do that. So thank you all for being here today. We'll go around into introductions, and I look forward to the conversation.
Ezra Eckhart at STCU.
Morning, Mark Schuler, City Administrator, City of G.
Good morning, Alicia Benson, CEO of Billiard Incorporated. Good morning, Meg Winchester, President and CEO of Visit Spokane. Dr. Marnie Rohrholm of Spokane Valley Performing Arts Center.
Chris Banger, City Clerk, City of Spokane Valley.
I'm Marie Smith in the town of Fairfield, Rockford, Waverly, Spangle, and Latop.
I'm Karen Morris, and I'm here as a citizen of the City of Spokane Valley. Thank you.
Todd Coleman, S3 Archery Solutions.
Karen Corkins, S3 Archery Solutions.
French County Commissioner, and this is my new executive assistant because she abandoned me. I know her personally. Steve Johnson.
Steve Johnson, Commissioner's Office.
Hi, John Kelly, Parks Director at Spokane Valley.
Good morning, Jared Webby, Communications, Spokane County.
Vicki Dalton, Spokane County, you're sensing a theme here.
Tim Fitzgerald, the County Clerk.
Gary Petrovich, Finance and Administration.
Morning, Melanie Rose with Vista.
Charlotte Emmett, County President.
Lindsay Myrie, SDCU. Jamie Baird, City of Liberty Lake.
Good morning, Mike Kennedy, Mayor Pro Tem Liberty Lake. Ryan Higgins, Spokane Valley.
I'm Woodard, Spokane Valley Council. I can sit in and see what's going on, see what I do something.
I am Pam Daly, City of Spokane Valley, and because of our board of government, I'm going to call this meeting to order for us here in Spokane Valley.
Eric Lamb, Spokane Valley.
John Holman, Spokane Valley.
Marcel Rollins, State Board of Veterans. Max Green, SJP Company. Jeff Morris, Spokane Commissioner's Office. Good morning, Art Bud. I'm a council member in Railway Heights. Fred Meyer with the Valley Chamber and Silver Percent. Roger Krieger, City of Deer Park Community Services Director.
Good morning, Michael Cathcart, Spokane City Council representing District 1, which is predominantly northeast Spokane.
Josh Kern, Spokane County Commissioner.
Good morning, Arthur Whitney, Spokane County Clerk's Office.
Good morning, Shay Blackwell, Legislative Assistant to Councilor Michael Cathcart.
Hi, Mark Carlos, and Councilmember Wilkerson's assistant.
Good morning, everyone. Betsy Wilkerson, City Council Spokane, District 2.
Good morning, Brad McClatchy, Policy Director, Spokane City Council.
Good morning, Gary Wu, Vice President of Economic Development for Greater Spokane.
Kevin Friend, Mayor of the City of Norwood.
Good morning, Mark Matthew, CEO of Spokane Workforce.
Diana Wilhite Enterprises.
Good morning, Matt Albright, representing Providence, and also Board Chair for the Valley Chamber.
Good morning, everyone. Tony McBride with Spokane Airports.
Good morning, Lance Beck, President and CEO for the Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, Tim Vandenberg, Spokane Valley Council Member.
Brady Keats, Spokane Valley City Council.
Morning, Nadine Woodward, Spokane Mayor.
Morning, Johnny Perkins, City Administrator, City of Spokane.
Good morning, Erin Schmidt, Innovia Foundation.
Good morning, Aaron McMurray, Innovia Foundation.
Good morning, Ivana Cabildo of Multi-Ethnic Business Association, or AHANA.
Good morning, Dennis Vermillion with Vista.
Hi, everyone, Scott Simmons, CEO of Spokane County.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Marty Dickinson. I'm with STCU, and I also have my hat on as Chair of the Public Facilities District.
Good morning, Lisa Brown, Department of Commerce.
Good morning, Alex Scott, Department of Commerce.
Thank you, and I'm Commissioner Mary Katie, District 2. And I did bring Jerry out of retirement here to help me today to facilitate this conversation. So Jerry, thank you for doing that, and I'm sure it's not the last time you're going to be coming out of retirement. So, and on the phone, we have several people on the phone that are community members as well as we have, I want to make sure I state for the record that Mayor Chris Kamiskas from the City of Liberty Lake is listening in today. She couldn't be here in person. As well as I know that Council President Fred Banks is listening as well on the line and could be very person. So thank you all. So we will get this conversation going. We're going to start off with the American Rescue Plan. So for Spokane County, we have $101 million that are here now and arriving, the second half will arrive in May. Federal guidance has just come out, and we've all been really waiting for that federal guidance. So I think last week, we received 473 pages, or 437 pages, over 400. So we're getting through that right now, so that we can make sure that as we put these dollars into our community, we're meeting the requirements and the guidelines of the rescue plan and the Treasury Office's guidance. As a former auditor, that's very important because we will all get audited on these dollars as they go out into our communities. So we want to make sure that they're being spent properly. The expectation is that these are not going to be spent quickly. That's what we're seeing from Commerce or from Treasury. Unlike CARES, and we'll get into just a few slides on CARES and the difference. But the expectation is that this is a reserve for us to draw on if there is another wave of COVID. It's also, the guidance highlights that this is to be flexible, transparent, and equitable. And so those are the things that we are really going to be looking at and paying attention to as we move forward and putting our plan together, because at Spokane County, we don't have our plan in place yet. We were waiting for the guidance to come out. So again, we knew what the rules were. That's true across most of our state. There's only a few counties that have put out a plan in some of those dollars. And so you will start to see now that guidance has finalized their requirements, that everyone's going to start looking at how they're going to be meeting the requirements and putting those dollars in place. There we go. Zoom is like easier to do it with your computer. So CARES versus ARP. CARES funding wasn't emergency based. It waived the normal red tape that comes with federal funding. We were able to get CARES dollars out very quickly. We still need to make sure that we met the requirements and the guidelines. But most of the funding that came through the region did come through Spokane County. So we got the bulk of that, which is what's different with ARP. We could do direct allocations. We didn't have to do our RFP process for every, grant that we're going to be giving out. I don't know what we want to call them because it brings you that RFP process. So every contract that moves forward is going to have more red tape. It's going to have conditions put upon it and measurements that you have to do. So it's not going to be quite as easy as Jeff will talk about here in a little bit. And the goal for CARES was that rapid disbursement, get it out there. And we saw that, with Spokane County, what we did is we got those funds out there quickly with the help of our business community, our chambers. They facilitated those Lone Star small businesses that really, as I've talked to many small businesses around the county, they got that money and it helped them, with their payroll, it helped with those expenses. So it was really important. And we didn't see in Spokane County the closure of businesses that other counties across the state and the nation saw. I think, with, again, that community conversation and everybody really coming together, we did a great job with our CARES dollars to help our communities survive this pandemic. So ARP funding, the red tape is back, and it's going to require more reporting. We have received less than half of the direct allocation from the region for funding. So our 101 million versus the 209 million that's coming into our Spokane County. There are no direct allocations, and the grants are through an RFP process. So again, you can't just say, okay, we're going to give this out to the small business community through GSI. We have to go through that process. So that's what's going to make, I just want to make sure people understand that ARP is going to be different than CARES and how we deploy these dollars. So here's just a visual to show how the CARES funds came in by jurisdiction. And I think it's pretty easy to see that, again, Spokane County got the bulk of those dollars, and we ensured that those were regional dollars. We really took care of everyone across the region. With the ARP funds by jurisdiction, we're just less than half, and the cities have their portion. So it's going to be important for us to have these regional conversations because, everyone's going to be looking to their jurisdictions to see what they need to do. And then as we come together, if there is a regional collaboration that we can. So that's the difference between how the CARES dollars came into our region versus how ARP is coming into our region. And I think that's an important distinction, you know, as to how then those would get deployed and who's making those decisions. And so this is the breakdown based on the latest guidance that you can find online. So some cities may say theirs is just a little off, but for the most part, I think we're pretty spot on with what the dollar amounts are. So you can see that again, Spokane County is getting the most at 101 million. City of Spokane is at around 81 million. City of Spokane Valley 16 million, and then it goes down from there, you know, for each of those communities to Waverly at 23,000. So again, that's why it's going to be important again to really look at, you know, for the counties to look at what the county needs are for our communities. And I think it's just very telling, you know, that other graph, you know, showing, you know, the 91 million versus the smaller percentage of the cities. So I'm hoping this helps frame the conversation that it's really important if you do want to look at original ideas and projects that we all have to be collaborating and coming together. And with that, I'm going to ask Jeff McMorris to come up, who is all things ARP for Spokane County, to talk about the rest of how ARP is going to be handed out.
Thank you, Commissioner Mooney. So just to hit some of the additional funds that could be available, we have the SLFRF. I think it should be a lot of other people here, if you're going to have an acronym, it's fine, others long. But that is the fund that actually all of the dollars you just saw came out. So that's a subset of ARP. We tend to think ARP is this formulaic money. There's additional money through the federal government. So you have both the formulaic and the competitive. So my previous job was at HUD. And with that, when HUD received extra money, for some of it, they decided to add it to the formulaic pot. So the Spokane city got $1 million and they an extra 300,000. It was just put into the formula. Other funds are put into a pot for competitive grants. So that's what you see there. And we have actually applied for some. Adrienne Schmidt is here, you can wait in the room. She has been on contract last year for both the city of Spokane and Spokane County. So she was looking for federal grant opportunities where maybe the county applies, maybe it's a joint application with some cities to try to get additional resources in the community. So we can expand our pot, it's possible. The regional growth cluster, we just realized we're not going to get. They had over 500 applications, only 11% moved on to the second round. We weren't in that one, but we continue to look for opportunities to apply for additional resources. And then there's also funding that comes through the state. So Director Brown is here, and she'll be referencing that. A lot of the money does go through commerce. So she'll let us know some of those opportunities in a moment. Just to talk categories, you all have the bright yellow piece of paper. There's about 61 subcategories that you'll see on that yellow paper. So when we talk to the press, when we talk to each other, we are usually referencing just the top 5 categories because those are the external facing categories that go out to the community. So what you have on the yellow sheet of paper, under public health, there's about a dozen subcategories. So if you have a project in mind and it doesn't neatly fit into one of those categories, it likely doesn't qualify. If it does neatly fit, we'll sell property lawyers. So that's just the way life goes. But do try to find a category that can meet what you're looking to accomplish. I do want to just touch on number 6 and number 7 for general awareness. Revenue replacement in the law that passed was a formulaic. You would put in your tax revenue pre-COVID, your tax revenue post-COVID, you would calculate a number, and you were able to put that amount essentially into your general fund to reimburse just your city or county expenses or your jurisdictions. The final guidance that just came out last week put in a $10 million standard deduction. So just like when you do your personal taxes, you'll want to see if you want to take that standard deduction or if you want to do the long form. And then in Washington state, just the tax structure between cities and counties, you'll see cities will have much bigger revenue replacement numbers. What I've seen in the paper, the city of Spokane has about a 20 million calculation, even though they have less money than us. We have a 4.8 million calculation. So it's not always apples to apples. It depends on your tax structure of your jurisdiction. So what the new rule came out last week was you can take just a flat $10 million. So when you saw the list of cities, pretty much from Cheney, Liberty Lake, and smaller, they all received less than 10 million. So they can put their full amount, since it's less than 10 million, into revenue replacement. The advantage is there, less reporting, it's the easiest reporting. You have more options. For example, general funds can pay for transportation. Your yellow sheet, you will not see anything for transportation. Please don't ask us to fix roads and potholes with ARP. But you can also do direct allocations, just as you can do out of your own general funds. So when you keep hearing, you'll keep hearing from us say no direct allocations, we're referencing categories 1 through 5. Those are the ones where the elected officials for their jurisdiction will pass by resolution their plan, and they will fund category 1.3, whatever that might be in public health. And then whoever meets that category's objectives can apply for those funds. But if it's in revenue replacement, you can direct allocate, much simpler. So for the small cities in the room, my guess is that's what they will all do. That's what I would do. And then administrative is just covering, a percentage of my pay that works on the ARP, the county could choose to fund out of the ARP versus the general fund. So, some of our grants office, budget offices, whoever works on the ARP, so that's the administrative side. And then just a quick timeline, community engagement is required by the law. So this meeting would be an example of that. The county has a survey out on their webpage. I encourage you all to go to it, get your friends, colleagues to fill it out, let your opinion be heard. ARP plans do not have to be done all at once. I'm sure many of you saw in the paper, the city of Spokane just did a $14 million appropriation. We have 81 million. So then through 2024, the elected officials in each jurisdiction can add to their plan or change them and amend their plan. After 24, the plan is set. The obligations that have been passed are done. There are 2 final years that you can spend those funds. Remaining funds after 26 are returned to Treasury. Of course, no legislative body can ever tie the hands of a future legislative body, so Congress can change this. But as of today, those are the laws. They did make some timeline changes to CARES, so we will see if that happens. And the next slide. Just a little bit about the county's survey. So this is very much just a general overview. The purple, the dark purple is rank number 1, like purple number 2, over to dark blue would be your number 5. The interesting thing, you'll see public health actually received the fewest first place, but I think probably it's just right at the survey, your passion drives you number 1. And then you think, oh, well, we're in a pandemic, we should make sure public health is funded. I think a lot of people took that for number 2. So you see the difference between people's first place choice and then how they get ranked when you actually rank them and put them up this way. The county right before Christmas, we went through this morning, looking at each category, subcategory, reading comments. So a lot of details behind this, but we just want to show this general overview. We've had about 1,500 comments so far on the website, so we are getting a good cross section. And I believe that's the end. Just wanted to kind of frame the rules a little bit for you before you go into the discussion, because historically our most frequent comment has been fix the roads. Yeah, just want you all to know that's not an option. Thank you.
So next I thought it was really important that we had someone from the Department of Commerce come and speak, because as we know with what's happened with CARES dollars, and as we're already seeing it happen with the ARP dollars, as money is coming down from the feds, some of it came directly to the local legislature districts, but some of it is going to the state and then coming down through the Department of Commerce to the state. We saw that with rent assistance is one of those, where it was important that the money that was coming down from the state in remittances then came down to the county, and in our case, we gave it to staff to contract with them to get it out to our community. We want to make sure we're doing that same thing here. We're being very thoughtful not to duplicate where we're putting funds, but we're enhancing where those funds are going. And so that's why I thought it was very important to have someone from the Department of Commerce come. And so we are very excited today that we have former Senate Majority Leader, former Chancellor of WSU Spokane, and current Director of the Department of Commerce, Lisa Brown.
Thank you so much. It's really fun to see so many people in person. I've seen many of you on Zoom screens over the last couple of years, but this is great. And thank you to the commissioner and to everyone who's organizing around collaboration on these federal, state dollars and that are coming down in various streams. And we have business leaders here as well as nonprofits. And I think that's really significant and positive. So I was asked a couple of key questions and I will answer those. And then I thought I would just offer 3 observations on how to be successful in getting these resources to the families and businesses who need them most. So first of all, the amount of funding that's coming through the state itself. So ARP is bringing in about $7 billion to the state in this 2-year biennium period, and about 1.9 of that will come directly through commerce. The largest piece will be for housing, affordable housing, and homeless, and we can talk more about that as we go forward. The next largest piece will be for broadband and other infrastructure, and that means water, sewer, etc., as well as major investments in broadband. And then the next largest piece will be in small business assistance. In addition to ARP, we are also looking at the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that is estimated to bring another $7 billion through the state. And again, some of that is up in the air depending on when it arrives, whether it will be appropriated by the legislature in the supplemental budget, or whether or not it will end up going through the Office of Financial Management and the governor in the interim. It all depends on when the dollars actually show up in the state coffers. And I won't go through all the categories because you've seen numerous categories, but IIJA, of course, is more focused specifically on infrastructure. But just to mention a few: multimodal transportation, public transit, electric vehicle infrastructure, weatherization projects, water cybersecurity, and resiliency, which is really important in this era with wildfire management and drought and needing to rehabilitate public lands and private lands. It will be a mix of competitive and formula grants, and as I mentioned, it is somewhat in flux depending upon when the dollars show up and through which agency, and each federal agency is on their own timeline. So consequently, and just to reiterate what was said before, some of these are one-time grants, but some of them are anticipated to last over a period of time. For example, the state small business credit initiative will last over a 4 to 10 year period of time. We are putting out an RFP right now. It's a very short turnaround time. So for those of you who are interested in that, please look at it right away. And as we mentioned in the beginning, Alex Scott is here. Some of you may know him. He worked for Senator Cantwell before. He's now with Commerce, focused on federal funds. We also have Julia Havens, who's our Community Engagement Outreach Director for Eastern Washington and covers several counties. But if you are still having issues navigating different funding streams or rules around that, don't hesitate to reach out directly to my office and we will direct you to the right person with the answer to that question. But the SSBCI, for example, will be over a period of time. And the idea there is to get credit to businesses very favorable terms with an emphasis on even unbanked businesses, furthest from good credit ratings and things like that to really help them stay on their feet. We will also be continually evaluating different federal opportunities that come through everything from, as Jeff mentioned, HUD or EDA, the Economic Development Administration. CDBG funds come through the state, and many cities and counties get their own direct appropriation, but if they don't, it comes through Commerce, and we do that funding to the smaller jurisdictions. As mentioned, an application that came forward here for the federal cluster economic development initiatives, highly competitive, was not funded in the round, but we at Commerce are doing our own cluster funding, and I believe a competitive application has already been submitted from this region in the life sciences. And so that cluster work where business, nonprofits, labor, if appropriate, and public sector comes together to talk about how to build a competitive advantage of an industry in a region, which for us, of course, life sciences, aerospace, tech, and clean energy projects. All of that work, I think, is going to get continued emphasis over the next few years. I have three major observations on being successful in distributing these funds. Mary already mentioned the whole issue of accountability and audits, and yes, that is part of what we're, it definitely sometimes slows down the process and putting the funds out there. But partnerships for the competitive grants really elevate the level of the application. So even if it's small participation, perhaps like it's a city, but the county can put in a small piece to supplement that, or it's a consortium of cities, that type of application often gets just additional attention because of the leverage that's there. Second, I just want to point out that in addition to what is coming from the feds through the state has its own initiatives. For example, our traditional housing program is the Housing Trust Fund, and we in Eastern Washington have generally been fairly successful there. Our major nonprofits like Catholic Community Services and others have made those applications, and that's a regular process where there's a pre-application period. We provide some technical assistance for smaller communities, and we're ramping that up. There's a real interest on the part of the legislature in getting more of these affordable housing dollars in small and rural communities. So please reach out to us if you're interested in that. We will be providing more direct technical assistance to help have successful applications. But the legislature's also created a new fund called the Rapid Acquisition Fund for Housing. And the idea there is, knowing how serious the crisis of homelessness and housing is, are there ways to take existing structures like apartment buildings or hotels that have facilities already in place and rapidly convert them into an asset anywhere along the spectrum, from a warming center to a shelter to transitional housing to permanent supportive housing. Mary asked me to comment on the fact that one of the issues here is operating funds to keep that going. And you may be somewhat reluctant to say, we're going to commit to this facility if we don't know the longer term operational budget. The legislature's aware of that. They're a little bit behind the facilities part of it. However, we will be through Commerce allocating dollars on the operating side for permanent supportive housing. We're trying to figure out right now the fairest way to do that. It's really important that we have success all across the state. The Rapid Acquisition Fund was it more or less rose out of the Seattle area where they happen to have some almost finished apartment buildings. The private sector was pulling back from, that they wanted to jump on and convert into this something on the affordable housing continuum. But we're very committed to making sure if there is a second round, and I certainly believe that there will be, that we can make it work for all parts of the state. But be thinking about facilities that could be converted and partnerships that could contribute to that. And that leverage, I think, and the partnerships are not just about these dollars, but keep in mind that the state has, through the capital budget, these ongoing facilities lists that are created. So childcare and early learning facilities is one, behavioral health facilities is another, the building communities fund is a third. So I guess what I'm saying is if you start to put together a partnership and you realize it's not going to work for these funds, put it, it could very well, that same application could go forward to the state and get in line in those different categorical capital funds that the legislature appropriates every year. And then finally, I'd like to encourage people to consider small grants to some of our smaller nonprofits to build their capacity. And to build their capacity to do a couple of things. One, to connect individual families and businesses to the things they're already entitled to. So the emergency broadband benefit, if you qualify, it's $50 a month off your broadband bill, your internet bill. It's in some cases $100 for a device. The childcare funds that are out there, many families are not taking advantage of them who would qualify for them. Although the child tax credit at the federal level is kind of hanging in the balance, the legislature has passed the working families tax credit, which will go into effect over the next couple of years. And that will be an additional refund to families that are low income with children, similar to the federal system. But those are just dollars that would circulate in our economy if our families were connected to them. And we think that these small nonprofits are very well positioned to be trusted messengers in those communities. And we also expect the legislature to continue to want to put more funds through organizations like AHANA. They're actually referring to them as by and for organizations, which means they were formulated by and to serve specific populations: veterans, people with disabilities, refugees, historically marginalized communities. And so I think it's worthwhile to think about a little funding for these nonprofits to build their capacity to be successful in connecting the communities they serve to the resources that are already there, as well as starting their own asset building because they have aspirations with community centers, childcare centers, affordable housing, et cetera. So thanks, everybody. I'm looking forward to the good work that will come on. Thank you.
Let's see if this mic is live. It is. So next I'm going to have Jerry is going to go around the room, and we're going to start with the mayor. We're going to start with Mayor Spokane and have each of the jurisdictions talk about what they're doing with their ERP dollars and what their thoughts are at this point in time.
I guess I'll stand up so I can address the room. Yeah, the city of Spokane will receive $81 billion in ARP funds. And one of the first things that we wanted to do at the city side was to work with council, administration and council in establishing a framework for how we were going to spend these dollars. So we spent quite a bit of time establishing the process. And we also reached 4 different goals on how we were going to spend the money. Replenish, of course, lost city government revenues because of the pandemic. Also reach out to the community partners to be able to fund initiatives and investments to support future growth and opportunities. Resiliency, to fund initiatives that will create some long-term stability for our city. And then relief for residents and for businesses that have been impacted by this pandemic. Our community engagement has been pretty robust. That was also a huge priority for us. The city launched a thought exchange online tool early on in July, and then in October we held 3 open house drop-ins at high schools in the 3 legislative districts throughout the city. Got a great turnout, lots of community engagement. We had some community members attend all 3 of them, so they were really excited to be part of that process. And then in the first of the year, council did approve a $14 million package. More than just about half of that money, $6 million, will go to affordable housing projects, $2 million for down payments for first-time home buyers, and then the rest of that package for playground equipment and restroom upgrades in some of our lowest income neighborhoods, along with funding for child care providers, arts, employment support for the arts, construction, pre-apprenticeship programs, and eviction legal defense programs. So 14 million of the 81 has been approved. We are also now in the process of creating RFPs to get those funds out directly into the community. So that's our city of Spokane report.
Yeah. Friends of the city of Valley.
Okay, so we're gonna receive approximately 16 million, just slightly over 16 million. We're not quite as up on it as the city of Spokane is. We're still gonna try to decide what to do. We don't have quite as much money either. Obviously, one of the things that we are looking at is replacing the internal costs from the pandemic, of course, first and foremost. Possibly landlord assistance, mental health assistance. I think mental health is important to everyone right now, and I think it should become a big priority for us. Also, assistance to childcare businesses, assistance for small businesses, law enforcement assistance. We have a laundry list of things we need, and this is one-time money that's going to come to us. And so I'm hoping to make a big impact. I would like our community and our citizens to really see that we're taking that money, we're using it for their benefit, and we want to make a big impact for our community for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Freeman. See it, I made you move up front, now I have to walk all the way across the.
So the city of Millwood received or will receive approximately $500,000. When we first, the council was first notified that we would be getting the money that the ARPA funds would be coming out, the council decided to prioritize the funds for community assistance, either in the idea of direct assistance to our residents and businesses. So we began with utility assistance and broad utility assistance into not only our own city utilities, but Avista, Telecom, all those other things. And then we began looking at funding smaller nonprofits, particularly those nonprofits that deal with the unhoused issues. So we are competitively and diligently looking for groups or nonprofits that might need assistance that serve the Millwood area. One of the other things we have decided to do is we have decided to use some of our funding for infrastructure, but our infrastructure funding, we have limited it to items that would increase our resiliency for disaster preparedness. So additional, we are in need of some capital improvements for our water supply system, and we would be spending on capital improvements. We are hesitant at this time to develop anything that would increase our operational budgets because these are one-time funds. So if we add a service on as part of these funds, we better know how we're going to pay for that in the future. And then the change in being able to put these funds directly for revenue recovery, which the city was not considering because fortunately we are in a economic position that we did not suffer any particular impact or loss of revenue. The council will be deciding if that is something we want to undertake to increase our flexibility in using these funds, or if we want to maintain the course and give these as grants under the items that they are allowed. So we're basically working through it as we can, but very much.
Mike, like to share with us what's going on in the city of Liberty Lake, please?
Thank you. I appreciate being here today, and I really appreciate our Mayor Kaniskas. Unfortunately, wasn't able to attend today. She's at another function, but unfortunately, she gave me notes. Mary reminded me at the very start, try to keep this within 3 minutes. The danger of a group like this, to give elected officials, I say keep it within 3 minutes. Congratulations with that. So for Liberty Lake, what we've looked at is that, like many other jurisdictions in the city of Liberty Lake, we've been mindful to be sure not to spend our funds we receive too quickly or too privileged. In some ways, deciding how to use ARPA funds has been difficult with the CARES Act funding due to the long time frame we have to spend it. At our July 6, 2021 City Council meeting, City Council identified 5 priorities for use of the ARPA funds. In no particular order, we decided it would be nonprofits, businesses, residents, technology, public facilities, and infrastructure. In October 2021, City Council awarded $270,000 to 13 local nonprofits to address the negative economic impact of the pandemic that we're all going through. Recipients included Friends of Liberty Lake Library, Winter Glow Spectacular, PTOs, 5 elementary and middle schools, Liberty Lake Rotary, the Hub Sports Center, Liberty Lake Kiwanis, Liberty Lake Lions, Valley Promise, and several other organizations. We use this as examples to try to see where we can get the funds out there to be benefited immediately. Liberty Lake has continued to purchase PPE and related equipment as needed to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in our community. Excuse me. Our HVAC equipment at City Hall is in the final stages of upgrading to provide better air circulation in the building, including council chambers. What we've seen, this is the benefit that gives us the support in our goal to return to in-person council meetings and for the overall better air quality for our employees and citizens when they come to see their government. We are in discussions with the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce on strategies to provide assistance to Liberty Lake businesses. We are also in discussion with the Liberty Lake Water and Sewer District on how to provide direct assistance to Liberty Lake residents. All of these, with great goals we're looking forward to. Council has also approved funds for upgrading our significant outdated IT systems and network security. So with that, our various possibilities related to ARP funds for additional facilities, public safety, infrastructure. I think I'd like to end with is that for me and the other council members, one thing we've talked about regularly is this: fair and equitable. How do we take the funds that are our citizens' funds? We're giving this funds to the best we can for our citizens because it is their money. It's not the government's money, it's our money. It's the citizens of all of us are. How do we be fair and equitable to the individuals that come forward? The difficulty is, how do we make decisions? How do I, as a council, with my one vote, be able to say, who comes to me, to the city, and ask for help funding? Do we reward individuals that practice bad habits so they can't pay their bills because they are doing other things with that money? Do we reward businesses that haven't planned ahead? Fair and equitable. For us, I think all of us in this room, I think that's something that's a priority to have moving forward. Just do the best we can for citizens' money to be able to help as many people as we can. Thank you.
Art, would you like to share with us what's going on in the city of Fairway Heights, please? Sure. Like to come forward.
No, better than that. Niners, go Niners. Yeah, sorry.
That's all there is.
I'm straight up. I understand. Thank you. I will try and read these as well as I can. I'm not used to this large rooms. Question was, how is Fairway Heights planning to use the ARP funding? The council has adopted a strategy for where to invest the funds, but has not made any specific decisions yet. The council wants to use the fund to focus on 5 areas. First, support programs that provide immediate relief to people in need. Second, restore reserves and stabilize budgets that were exhausted. Third, restore targeted programs that were reduced or cut due to the pandemic. Fourth, look at opportunities to partner regionally on common objectives. And fifth, make investments in the city's most high priority objectives. Side note, use of past Washington State Corona relief funds, we spent approximately $429,000. And we spent those on, I brought my glasses, I should wear them. Additional childcare access to businesses and families, help businesses prepare workplace readiness programs, and developed a business navigator to support local businesses, and provide a multimodal community educational program. But now, the guidance that we're getting today, many of these may shift and refocus on. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I'm gonna keep mine pretty short and sweet. The discussions we had with our council and our staff, we're trying to do what's best for the community. And so we've mainly identified three things: infrastructure, people, and businesses. Big bucket, that's gonna be infrastructure addressing water in the city too. We have a lot of old water mains that are in desperate need of replacement, especially in some of the older sections of town where a lot of the lower income folks live. So that's gonna be our primary bucket. Secondary will be assistance to some of our lower income folks in town, utility rate assistance, as well as, some of the small businesses in town. They suffered, quite nearly during the corona virus pandemic we've been in, and we want to really try to make sure that they are secure for the future. Those are the ones that are in need most, and that's where we're going to focus our efforts. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
I'm near and dear to my heart, dear part.
Yeah, thanks. Now I know why the mayor and councilman showed up today. I learned about this meeting yesterday. So let me tell you what we did at Pierce Funds is we had a long discussion and focused on how we could figure out a way to benefit everyone, both businesses and ratepayers. As it relates to infrastructure, we had a $6 million loan that we're working through ecology to do a major improvement to that. Years ago, we were eligible through the DOE rules to get up to $5 million grant for hardship. Our town's growing, population's increasing, and no longer do we qualify for that. So we're in a position, in this spot where we have to buy the $6 million loan, which is great news. And so the CARES funds came along, and our council took a look at that and said, if we could buy down that loan with some of these funds, coupled with Arp Funding, we could try to help the ratepayers in the long term through rate increases, not continuously year after year after year, pay out this loan that goes for 20 years. So the council really hasn't had a chance to discuss this act yet, and I am curious what the ARP plan needs to be that we have to put together. But from a staff standpoint, obviously we're going to be trying to buy off, we can buy out another $1 million roughly of that loan. It again drops that down. So instead of a $6 million loan, we're paying back over 20 years, we get down to $3 million. Then the repairs all benefit from that. The low income, the businesses, all of that kind of uniform. So that's how we dealt with repairs. And I hope that we can look the same way for this project.
Vicky, who represents, I don't know, what, 35 towns or something?
That's for sure. My name is Vicki Harnois. I'm a council member with the town of Rockford. So I will talk about the 5 towns. They're all located in the south part of Spokane County, a combined population of a little less than 1,700. So they're I think there's 3 that are located on Highway 27 and the other on 195, and then Waverly is between both highways. So the first one I'll talk about is Latah, population of about 200. And their emphasis is going to be on improving any kind of lines, updating lines in their sewer system or water system. They have no sewer, they have no businesses. And broadband, of course, is another issue. So once we can get those solved, they might have a few businesses come in, even if they're home based. The town of Waverly, a population of 110, and their situation also the same, no sewer system, no businesses. And they do need improvement on their water system also. The town of Fairfield has 600 people. Luckily, they have a nursing home that has probably helped with that population. They are going to be looking at updating their community center, a very active community center with a generator. They got a lot of funding in the past from the Novia Foundation, and so they're always seeking money, but they are going to get a generator for the community center, and then they also are going to have grants for past due utility accounts. The town of Spokane has 250 people at this time. They were approached about approving a 199 lot subdivision, and if that were to happen, then naturally their population will put them way over 250. They also have water system and sewer system, and of course they all need to be upgraded. Rockford has a population of 520, and we are going to be proposed right now anyway, to upgrade our water meter readings. They're doing it by hand, and they want to invest in digital water meter readers. There's businesses in Spokane, Fairfield, and Rockford. And one of the things that I can tell you what my fear is, and there's two, that the money they get, they may not spend it all. Well, I luckily had a chance to attend a Zoom meeting yesterday with Novia Foundation, and I found that we could establish, if we do have remaining funds, a community fund that will benefit any future projects that the community may want to put in a pot. But we'll be working closely with the Novia on that, because we don't want to just have our money float away and not use it. So that's pretty much it. I just want to put a plug in for Rockford that we are the gateway to the Palouse Scenic Byway on Highway 27. And so it kind of leads you to the Palouse and all the rolling hills and beauty. So, thank you.
Is anyone from any of the other towns or jurisdictions? Artie's going to visit with us about the business community.
Yes, and so I want to give a special thank you to all the members of the business community that are here today for this conversation, and happy that you took the time. You're concerned, you're wanting to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our community, and so I'm happy to have you.
Thank you very much. I would say, just on behalf of the business community, thank you to everybody in the room and to Commissioner Cuny for bringing this together, because I think at the end of the day, this is exactly the work that we were hopeful would be an outcome of some of the things I'm just going to briefly talk to you about today. So I'm Marty Dickinson. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for STCU, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the Chair of the Public Facilities District, as well as the Chair of the Board of Regents for Washington State University, and have a long history, and I know some of you perhaps a tired voice in this community and just trying to kind of keep pushing us forward. Not too long ago, the top 16 funders of private funders of economic development and philanthropy came together to talk about Arp and what that could mean for the community. And of those 16 funders that came together, we represented in 2021 over $5 million of giving to nonprofits and to organizations throughout our region. So we came together, and I want to first say, on behalf of the business community, thank you to all of you that dispersed the CARES funding, because it made a massive difference and it bridged us into the next round of this pandemic. And we recognize that it wasn't an easy task, so thank you very much. We also recognize and understand the parameters that you were trying to navigate within, and really appreciate even more insight to Arp and how it works. We didn't come together for the sake of trying to tell you how to spend the money as much as we came together to ask to see this happen. As an entity that gives millions of dollars away, and we're being approached by hundreds of nonprofits and different entities, all of doing amazing work, but with no coordination or collaboration, it becomes challenging for us, just as it does all of you as you try to figure out how to do these grants. We're kind of living that every single day, thinking, oh geez, it's unfortunate that this is happening in the city of the Valley, this is happening in the city of Spokane, this is happening in Spokane County, but none of the dots are being connected, and we're not leveraging the private money probably the best way we could with some of the public funds. So really, we think that this is an opportunity. One, to do the sustainable things that need to happen to do economic recovery and to ensure we are taking care of our most vulnerable population and doing the kind of things to set the stage so we can be a compassionate, inclusive, and really forward-looking community and region. And how do you best use us in that process? So if you have these one-time funds, how does the private sector come in and help you be sustainable with some of our dollars? But we know we can't continue on the path we're on of just doing a onesie-twosie here and there, because we're not leveraging the best way that we possibly can. So our hope today, and what we are committed to, and I know I speak for everybody that signed our ARP document, we are committed to organizing with you. We are committed to looking forward, not getting mired down in what we used to do or what the past looked like. We have an expectation, and we're going to start to use our dollars with those who are coming together to collaborate, coordinate, and be competitive with things that, like Lisa shared with us, and things that we could be doing at a federal level. Let's come together, as Dennis so eloquently said, and Scott Morris before him said, we're really good as a region of knowing how to take the hill if we know the hill. And when Lisa had her Senate Majority hat on, and so many of you were, in office, we were really good at taking the hill and doing some very, very good things. And we believe this is an opportunity to truly come together and create a regional plan that benefits each of your cities and your locations, but also leverages and rallies for a better future for everything we can do in our region. So just a quote from Ezra, the CEO of SCCU, who has a very, very strong passion around wanting the government to be voice of unity, wanting government to be a model of unity. And as he said to me and has said to me in the past, in the words of Benjamin Franklin in the Declaration of Independence, you have to know Ezra, he's kind of a history buff. He says, we must all hang together, or with most assuredly, we'll hang all separately. And so this is just our opportunity. We're very excited, I think, as a business community. I think we've done a nice job of perhaps bucketing, listening, learning, and coming together from lots of different groups to share with you where we think we would like to invest dollars. Not necessarily ARP dollars, but perhaps ARP dollars are seeding some of the idea and the concept, and we can then come together collaboratively and competitively to go and really get what our fair share is at the federal and state level. So thank you very much. Again, thank you for bringing us together today. This is a huge step in a really positive direction. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, now we have an assignment. Everybody have a few of these copies on your table. And for some of the tables that don't have a lot of votes, you might want to move over and join some other tables. Because what we're going to have to do is this isn't the end of the conversation. This is the start of the conversation. And remembering the 5 categories that allow for the ARP funds, have a discussion about what, pick 2, 3, 1, write down 2 or 3 you think are very important issues under those categories and can be looked at further. Just take time to dialogue and do a little brainstorming. And then we'll come around a little bit later and pick a spokesperson, and we'll just have them report out what's going on today. Thank you. Any questions? So how are we doing, everybody? Do we need more time, or are we about ready to? Yeah. Okay, a little more time. 5 more minutes and then we'll get to start recording now, but that was after the. I'm going to start back here. And we're going to refer out everybody, we're getting ready to go. What do you folks ready? Have a spokesperson? Here we go. Okay, everybody, let's give each other attention here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we had a little trouble with funding amount because we just didn't know. But, our first category is 2.10, which is, our ideas like small nonprofits such as Naomi, Family Promise, maybe helping Hope House with operational costs, things like that. Our next one is 3.10, which is to help private-public partnerships like the low-income housing and more housing. I'm not super familiar, if I'm right on this, but I believe you have to have like 40% low income to use Arp money, something like that. Anyway, we need housing in all areas, not just low income. And then, of course, 5.5 and 5.6, which is infrastructure. So sewers, drinking water, things like that. We have some old infrastructure in our area that was put in by the county years before we were even incorporated. And so we'd like to upgrade that if possible.
Very good. Who's the spokesperson over here, Trent?
I suppose I am. So I think it's a recurring theme from what I can tell, point 1.1 and 3.1 that both kind of deal with housing and homeless issues in general, mental health, and then direct housing support, affordable housing, as well as childcare, getting people back to work is certainly a hot topic everywhere as well. So I don't think we strayed too far from the general themes. We also kind of discussed a little bit of trying to look at concepts around long-term use of these funds, if there's a way to structure that or look at ideas that way, which wasn't directly on this, but something about that.
All right. Yeah, come back. We'll come here.
So our table came up with a list of different things. These are not necessarily any particular priority, just areas of interest for the table. So number one is housing, 3.10. Affordable housing, we're more focused on ownership and not more apartments that have subsidized rents. And so one idea that I floated to the table is the creation of a community development financial institution to establish a revolving loan fund that can make the down payments for folks that are low income or communities of color that could assist them in getting into home ownership, not more subsidized rents, but home ownership. And then from a sustainability standpoint, it could be funded through CRs, which are community reinvestment funds, and initial seed funding through Arp. Second category would be broadband and water sewer. And so PDA in the West Plains is working with CalSpels and SIA to extend broadband out of the West Plains. The water infrastructure to support additional growth in the West Plains, as well as the communities up there that struggle for water supply. And then stormwater for the West Plains Terrace, and to deal with water, storm drainage issues, and to accommodate future growth for housing, workforce housing in the West Plains to support all of the new businesses that are up there. And then economic support, 2.13. Community-wide vision from our standpoint could be pursuing an aerospace manufacturing company to locate a facility in Spokane. Now that Boeing is through their 737 MAX challenges, there's a great opportunity for us to re-engage in a conversation they tried to start 3 or 4 years ago in developing a new market aircraft. And we should be the location for that. And that would be a community-wide initiative that would have generational benefits for this community and stuff. So I think, and then continued support for public health services in the region until we could see the pandemic in the rearview mirror.
is Brenda's putting these up on the board. If you give me a paper, and when you're all done, just leave whatever you wrote down on the table so we'll gather those up and make sure that we capture it. Are you ready, sir?
All right, so I had the unbelievable group of Vicki Dalton and Gerald Haynes with me, and our focus was around early learning, so 3.1 and 3.6. And we know that early learning is part of infrastructure, but our thoughts were that it's targeted investments in tuition assistance for families, mental health access, which we've heard from quite a few people, and the big one, which we've heard from almost everybody, is facilities assistance. And just take a facility that me and Haley run, we serve about 100 families, and the cost is about $20,000 a month just for the facility. Think about taking out that $20,000 cost. Well, now we can give that directly to our staff. There's a lot of people who love doing the work of early learning, but they need to make a livable wage in order to continue doing that. So we're definitely glad that almost everybody that stood up highlighted that as well. The other thing that came up for us is 2.2 and 310 around housing. And we know that there's supports for rental assistance, but the big one that we just heard about is home ownership. More supports for that, especially for more marginalized communities who are being priced out of their neighborhoods currently right now. Thank you.
Carrie Adler, Vicki Dalton, I should have recognized her earlier, is here helping us. Nice to see you. Who's your spokesperson?
Thanks, Jerry. So we had some regional thought, some valley thought, and also representing our small towns of the Palouse. And our first big conversation was what we've heard multiple times, kind of 3.10, 3.12 around housing, thinking about both ownership pieces and affordability, rental assistance, how do we continue to have support programs around that. The second area, which we know is a regional issue, but we were particularly talking about it for our small towns of the Palouse, was water, sewer, broadband projects, which is all under the fifth category. Is there opportunity for completion of those projects or building in some of that infrastructure for our small towns? And then the third conversation we had, both at a local level, could be for individual cities. They were talking about this for the towns of Rockford and Fairfield, but also something we've been talking about at a regional level is some kind of which would be under 2.9, maybe 2.9 through 2.13, which would be around a regional business or kind of economic opportunity fund. How do we have our own regional assistance fund supporting whether it's retention or growth of an existing business, helping a business owner be able to purchase or do remediation on a piece of land that will allow that project to move forward, but adding to a sustainability fund to our community for projects that are that we care about in the region. So that was the third big area we talked about.
Michael? Thank you. So we put together a couple ideas that are more broad, something that could be considered around the region here. So first and foremost, water sewer infrastructure, 5.5, 5.5. And we didn't really announce, kind of hard to make a guess on what the amounts would be, but so the basic idea is that we would expand utility capacity to support housing within the urban growth boundaries. So looking at areas where it makes sense to invest in infrastructure so we can get more housing built, which is really, really important, especially right now. Second, 2.14 was where we identified, and just basic idea of providing additional hiring incentives for public safety employees, especially really highly qualified public safety employees that want to attract to the Spokane region. And then the third was, and this is a little bit not so specific in terms of category. I think there's a economic impact that kind of relates to this, and then probably some revenue replacement dollars will have to be a part of this. But investing in underserved and under-resourced public development authorities, and in particular, the Northeast Public Development Authority, which has long been underserved and under-resourced in our community. So that's an area where we can see a lot of job growth, housing, all kinds of investments. It's an amazing area for our community. So putting some additional dollars there. And then the last thing I'll add, this is not part of ours, it's just a passion of mine, and that is really trying to champion funding for the old Billiard library to see it converted into behavioral health. There's a really good opportunity there. I'm trying to encourage my colleagues on the council, other electeds to support this project. I think it's going to be fantastic and a very big help to, again, a very underserved portion of our community. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, for my colleagues on that, but great conversation. We perhaps I'll start with a bit of context. We did come up with one generalized idea that we could map to some of the specific numbers here. But taking a step back from the list, we really did have a long conversation about what would be generational impact? What are ideas that are examples of something that a generation or two will look back? This is a unique time in our community. We want to find that is available here. You know, our conversation started with, I've been here since 2008, and I'm still considered a good community. Sounds like you're not 3 generations in Spokane, you're still a community. But my kids, when they were little, we go to Root Park Square, they love it. And people would tell me that in 1965, you did not take your kids there. It was just not a nice place. But now it's fantastic. What sort of idea has that kind of generational impact? So that was sort of the labor starting point of our conversation. We recognize that there's a number of goals, a number of requirements of this money. A lot of different areas have revenue replacement needs and other required factors. So that means that it's not easy to unpack how to use some of this money. We also had a really good conversation that there are sources of funds beyond ARP. The number's actually much bigger in our community than this. If we can do leverage, I mean, it's 2 to 3 times this money, generally speaking. So it's actually bigger than we think, which I think should put some acuity, some focus on how to make this even more generational. There's a couple of interesting observations of our community. One of them is that we do have a lot of land. That there is Department of Transport land, perhaps underutilized land in our community. Finally, we do want to recognize that there are jurisdictional differences. We do have different jurisdictions, different cities, and there are probably ideas that are going to have those respectful differences as part of making a group. So the idea we started to center around was sort of this concept. Other cities use this concept of a business park, business incubator park / housing area, where picture, if you will, a physical place, a thing that a generation from now someone can point to and say, that's what happened. That is where a business incubation and business infrastructure to attract economic development of new businesses finds it appealing. But very much adjacent to that is housing. And so you've got 1,000 inhabitants that bicycle to work or walk to work that are in this area. It's almost like a town within a town. And we felt that there was so not get too diluted in all of the different categories, because there's a lot of categories. We basically just landed on 3. Economic development, which is both retention of companies and attracting new companies. So a physical place that accomplishes that goal. Secondly was housing, and having a combination of affordable housing and housing that's attractive to the employees of these businesses. And then thirdly, the broadband category that ensures that broadband connectivity isn't in areas. And almost creating a blueprint for this idea that can be placed in 2 or 3 of our jurisdictions. They may scale by size. One of the cities Spokane may be bigger than one Spokane Valley, but it's a scalable model. And so we can do not 1, but 2 or 3 of these simultaneously that has this look and feel of a business incubator, advanced business area that attracts business as well as teaches. has housing, and has property. And then we can use those other sources of funding to double up on the funding that we have. So that's kind of general.
Spokesperson, Ben?
Basically, we focused on 2.9, which is to support small business economic assistance general, and 2.10 to support nonprofit organization. So the first idea is basically to, because the COVID-19 and also the economic disruption has really caused a lot of real negative results with small business, in particular the multi-ethnic businesses who are basically small and they don't have the capital to stay on for a long time. So we would like to ask that some of the money be allocated towards grants for small businesses that are 5 or less employees, or loans, short-term loans to support small businesses so that they can stay in business. And we also need to look at sustainability of that to build the capacity of our small businesses. So the second one is which is 2.10, to support the existing small business providers, services providers in Spokane, in particular those providers that target some multi-ethnic businesses because of the negative impact of the situation. And then the third one is more of a long-term project to allocate some funds on an ongoing projects right now to create a coalition of small business service providers to create an ecosystem of support for small businesses in Spokane. So those are the three areas.
We're in.
Our group represented discussions from the city of Spokane, Spokane Valley, Visit Spokane, Anovia, and then also secondary ties to the mental health, behavioral health community, and education. And what really resonated with our table was that generational impact. What we heard on we need to rally and we need to collaborate. And what we realized is we wanted to use this as seed that would have near-term results, but really looked long-term. And our ideas really circulated around some rally points that people could wrap their minds around and participate in, but also knew that it would be long-term. Our two ideas focus on the economic development categories, as well as the impacted communities and the public health, which does include mental health and behavioral health. So our first one is looking at a supported scholarship last dollar model that is in the works right now with Anovia and follows suit in 6 other communities throughout the nation, where you take graduating seniors from our high schools and you help them make that last step to commit to their 2, 4-year or training. But as you give them their last dollar, you're also backfilling with supports with current nonprofits and other organizations to the families that are here in Spokane. And that's where we want to go ahead and have that kid learn to succeed, come back into Spokane, become the workers here that we need in 5, 10 years, but also have their nucleus figure out the hope that they didn't realize was achievable through this ongoing initiative. That would be through some seed money that might come from the public sector, but then would also be leveraged by what's going on in the private sector for unique needs for economic development and workforce that we need to backfill in the years ahead. The second one in our rally point is leveraging the 50th anniversary of Expo 74.
those leaders realized they needed to do something downtown Spokane to put it on the map. And as we look at that anniversary, we want to use that point to look at what our landscape is today and rally again. What are some things plaguing our area as a whole that we want to address, but do it in the context of celebration? So what do we want our downtown core? What do we want our urban waterscape, the things that we bring people here to Spokane to celebrate from, to look like today and start problem solving with seed money from ARP and like contributions to then take us to the next step, just like Expo 74 did 50 years ago.
Thank you. This last slide. Who we got?
Thank you. So our group had a very robust discussion around 2.10, which is housing, affordable housing. It was really beyond just maybe a specific project, but we talked about things like utilizing public-private partnerships to leverage the dollars, to increase the access to housing. So trying to holistically look at it, it's not just a public solution, but what sort of things can be private, and the development community to answer those things. Discuss like it's a volume issue that we're 10,000 to 20,000 units short. So we really need some big projects. So how are we going to do these big things? How can we incentivize and then maybe take away some of the disincentives, developers, create these things, but also create that housing product that we need, the more affordable housing product. Talk about joining together and finding out maybe what the barriers were to that, maybe some of the regulatory barriers, and talk about grouping together and taking the hill, as Mario pointed out before, but taking the legislative and going together as a community to Olympia to maybe try to create some new things. We did have a specific project around the I-90 corridor because it was a broad swath of land that they took originally for the I-90 corridor, much of it unutilized. And you'll see this sort of green space in the summer, a little drier space, but that isn't being utilized. Can we utilize that for housing? Actually, I thought it tied in really well to Marcelo's group's discussion because it is a pretty significant piece of land. There's opportunities to mixed use type development there. Then also we talked a lot about working together, how can we work together regionally, how the business community doesn't necessarily see borders, nor do our nonprofit organizations that are providing services see borders. And so maybe that's an opportunity for those groups to lead, to take some of the regional nature of this, utilizing joint resources for organizations that will help communities reach their clients, navigators that will help nonprofits understand the channels that they can utilize to get these funds, having school districts here who also received a large amount of the funding. And then another one on 2.9 was the discussion about a business accelerator, which was targeted towards, we use the term by and for organizations, but also industry certified.
Thank you. I would have rather had cleanup because I think just say, yeah, everything you all have said. And you'll see some reoccurring, I think, themes from our table as well. And you'll also definitely see a bend based on the makeup of our table. And I wanted to talk about Marcelo's comment around generational impact. And I am a multi-generational family here in Spokane, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that sits before us. I think we're sort of at that pivoting point, and we should take advantage of the big crisis to really do some self-reflection, some investment in who we are as a community and where we want to go. I think we've heard that throughout many of these conversations. So we kind of looked at it and came at it from a short term and a long term. Obviously, we are in the midst of a crisis and we need to stop the bleed. So we need to invest immediately in the things that we know are working and really build capacity in those things, particularly around mental health. I think we all can say we're a little mentally drained from all this. And it's in every aspect of our lives, particularly in our work lives as well. We're starting to see that spill over and the impact it's having on our workforces. So we need to to recognize that, we need to invest in that and double down. So we put mental health as our sort of first priority. Again, capacity building for the existing infrastructure that's there, helping support that, helping develop the workforce within that to be there to meet the need that's great now, as well as thinking about the longer term investment that needs to be made in that as well. So the other piece we talked about was workforce pretty significantly, and we can't go anywhere without, as we all know, people looking for jobs. And when you think about our community in terms of where do we want to be in the future, we really want to take care of those who are here. We want our kids who are currently going to school to stay here, be able to stay here and work here. And so we really need to double down on the people that are here in our community that want to upskill, have more opportunity, and help support them. So we think investing in things that like Mark is working on at the Workforce Council, they've got some great partnerships already existing, capacity building again there, so that we can help the immediate workforce meet the challenges. And then again, long term, we're going to have to help tuition assistance, all the wraparound services, Luke and Pam's childcare needs. Those are all great and important for our workforce. And so we really think that investing in those wraparound services as well is critical right now. While we think about, again, long term, what do we want this community to look like? What are the industries that we want to be here? I think we have an opportunity to be selective now. We shouldn't just want everything to show up here. We should want what we want for our community. So we should, which leads to our third category, the economic development piece, which is about Alicia's work, and Gary's work, as I said, looking at what industries we have here, really thinking about sustainable funding for economic development. And I mean that in a little more holistic conversation. It doesn't just involve funding an economic development organization specifically. It's about creating affordable housing, about creating an awesome education pipeline, and those connectivities to industries so that they can go to school and then they stay here. I mean, I think that's what we all are really looking for. So we think that really having a thoughtful conversation around economic development, leveraging the work that Alicia and Gary are doing right now with the SED is critical to moving us forward.
Marty?
Okay, so we had a lively discussion as well, and I think we will repeat a lot of this, although being an Enneagram 3, I tend to want to be competitive and win, and so that means you have to set like really specific goals. And so one idea, and I'm also a marketer, so I like to have a campaign around things. So we want to be known for being the connected community and the connected region. And so therefore, let's start with broadband. We identified, you have private partners who could work on device funding. You have public partners that can do the infrastructure and the subsidy side of things. You have Department of Commerce who can assist you in accessing the funds and the tools that we could use. And then you have other partners like Petrocor that can help with the infrastructure and the build out, as well as like a WSU and using their extension offices in these rural or smaller communities. So that was one of our things we talked about. The second one was, how do we do career pathing, specifically in working with like Mark and Career Connect Washington on identifying the shortage and needs we have in our community. So it's one thing to just be looking for workforce, but how do we go after creating curriculum and pathways for mental health professionals, getting around the red tape? Do they have to have an AA degree? Do they have to have a 4-year degree? What do they need to really start to be able to do a pathway to helping and serving those that are in desperate need of assistance? Nurses, I mean, my goodness, we're sitting with a medical school in our backyard, soon to be another full-blown medical school at the University of Washington and UW. And we have an opportunity with Multicare in Providence and 3 institutions to do something really meaningful in our communities. Then I kind of like this one, I named it, but it's called Get 'em Early. And it's really the childcare concept, right? The holistic approach to childcare access. Again, how do we identify what the need is? I mean, how many little heads and beds do we need, if we're talking from a hospitality center? How many heads and beds do we need, and how many do we have currently? What's the gap? And then who are the partners that we can help from a private and public standpoint? And how do we get to be known for being a community that takes care of their families, all families, and that, you know, we're inclusive and we want to be able to educate our kids from, you know, at 3 all the way up to working with Anovia, and to say, yes, that we as a community are going to give every child an opportunity to have some form of a trade or an education, regardless of what scenario they're coming out. But at the end of the day, none of that matters, and I don't know if any of this matters unless we have housing to be able to have. You can't learn, can't work, you can't do anything really unless you have a safe place and a place to, you know, be able to, you know, have your basic needs met, right? So do we have it, are we willing as a region to, I say, you know, to say, and by year 2026, we as a region, not as the city of Spokane, not as Spokane County, but as we as a region, are we going to build 15,000 affordable housing units? And in those units, we're committed to providing services where we bring in partners like Anovia, Chaz for healthcare. I mean, what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it differently, and how are we going to commit that? And then bring the private partners to build it and tell them what they got to build it for, and bring the public assistance to be able to do that. So all of these things, and I said this to Mary, is I'm speaking on behalf of these private folks that are here today, but for a next step, we would be willing to participate and pay to come back for like a 2-day, really roll up your sleeves concept and bring us together to start mapping like how we actually accomplish some of these things and put real metrics around them so we can start to back into some progress and some success.
Well, I want to thank everybody for putting in some hard work, great ideas. As Marty said, this is the start of the conversation. This isn't the end of it. The biggest tragedy, and I'm just speaking as a private citizen now, that could come of these dollars that we inadvertently duplicate our efforts, because as you all know, that's not the most efficient way to spend dollars. There's no reason to duplicate. There's no reason not to communicate with each other. So, thank you for coming, and Mary.
Thank you, Jerry, for facilitating this conversation. I know that it was a conversation that some people wanted to have, some people did want to have. And I think it's just important for us to at least come together, brainstorm, like Dennis said. I mean, if we don't brainstorm and have some vision for the future, we're never going to get there. So I thank you all for having this conversation today. It was bold, it was courageous on everyone's part. I think we've got a lot of great information. This does help the county with our community outreach. I will say that on our ARP, we're gonna put that down as well as one more community outreach that we're doing. But truly, thank you for being here. And Martin, we may be taking you up on that, because I think we do need to think of what is the next step, because we don't want this to be the last step. This has to be the first step. So whoever is going to help convene that, I know I think everyone in this room seems committed to making sure that that happens. So we'll work together and make it happen and come together again soon. And I mean, that's the whole thing. This is going to be, we don't want to wait too long. We've got to really start to have these conversations ongoing sooner than later. And I know I've had people kind of text me along the way, we're having school districts part of this discussion. And I will say, we did keep the numbers smaller today because of the fact that we knew with COVID numbers and everything, we wanted to keep it a safe space for everybody. And so numbers were down. We did invite all the boards and the chambers and all of that, which we would like for, and hopefully in the future we can. But again, a great first step. Thank you all very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
much.